too, man. Stop playing around.
Hello, you beautiful nerds. It's the most wonderful time of the year. I mean, I say that about a lot of times during the year, but I mean it this time. What started as a silly pun of the date May 4th has grown into a day to celebrate and reflect on our most storied franchise in film history. And obviously, if you haven't twigged from the name of the channel, I freaking love Star Wars, and on the whole, it's probably my favorite franchise to consume. But there was a little sci-fi movie that came out in 2024 that created a bit of a scuttlebutt because it also featured a white dude on a sand planet that's destined for greatness. So I thought it'd be fun to discuss the similarities and differences between these two franchises, mainly focusing on the themes, main characters, and their cliffhanger sequels. Then I guess I should say which one I like more, probably? I guess. Makes sense to do that, right? But enough preamble, let's get down to the nitty gritty and talk about what we're talking about. So let's do the intergalactic hallucinogenic version of the Pepsi challenge and let's see whose spice is more nice. These two franchises have an interesting relationship with each other. The books that the Dune films are based on predate Star Wars and is seemingly a direct inspiration. But those books are so old and Star Wars is so popular that some people will walk into Dune 2021 and think, this kind of feels like Star Wars. George Lucas, at the time of this recording, has yet to admit that he's ever read Dune, and I'm kind of inclined to believe him. Sometimes there is a collective consciousness where smart, creative people have the same good idea, but because they're individuals and not clones, there is a clear delineation in their work. Because let me be perfectly clear, these are two very different franchises telling very different stories. That being said, there's a lot of shit that is similar, dude. Like, George, are you sure you didn't read, like, just a little bit of Dune? But let's talk about Paul and Anakin for a bit. I already mentioned in my Dune 2 review that there are some similarities between the two. They both had troubling visions of loved ones that caused them to totally lose their shit. And of course, the whole chosen one thing. But don't worry, we'll get into that. But the biggest connection between them is their reaction to death, or more specifically, their death denial. Philosopher Ernest Becker expressed in his book, The Denial of Death, that humans spend most of their existence coping with the eventuality of their own death and the death of the ones that they care about. Anakin's fear of his mother's death and his subsequent fear of Padme's death is what essentially drives him to go off the deep end and become a Sith Lord.
I will be the most powerful Jedi ever. I will even learn to stop people from dying.
You sure about that?
Paul also has a strange relationship with death. We see at the end of part 1 that Paul has never killed a man before, and it's a pretty emotional moment when he finally has to. Not just because of the circumstances of Paul's loss to innocence, but also because of what it means going forward for Paul. Becker also argues that the more a person kills or takes a life, the more in control of death they feel. According to this logic, the more Paul kills, the more he feels the sense of control of life. As Paul continues his siege and starts to rack up bodies, he also starts feeling himself a little bit too much and operating as if the path he has chosen is infallible and sacrosanct. And people who think that they are never wrong tend to make bad decisions.
He who can destroy a thing has the real control of it.
Like, Vader and Muad'Dib are kind of two peas in a pod. I feel like they would totally hang out, you know? They would totally have fun together. Because these are both some scared, sad little boys. Like my man Ernest goes on to say, man focuses himself on something narrow at hand and pretends that the whole meaning and miraculousness of creation is limited to that. Basically stating that artificially inflating the significance of a certain element in one's life allows a person to believe that their actions are of prophetic importance. Through this illusion, a person can stifle their fear of death by feeling that the actions that they take in their lives will have a significant positive impact on all humankind.
Do you often dream things that happen just as you dreamed them?
Yes.
One of the more interesting aspects of Dune's story is the subversion of the hero's journey. We start part 1 assuming that Paul's story is gonna go the way of Luke Skywalker or Harry Potter or Neo or some such shit. But Dune manages to morph our hero into a villain right before our very eyes. The central dramatic question of Dune is, can a person change the course of their destiny, or is one's fate inescapable? Paul thinks that what he is doing is for the greater good.
It's all about the
greater good.
But we don't really know that though. What we do know is that all of this Messiah stuff is, at least in this story, it's all propaganda that's perpetuated by a centuries-old organization that is orchestrating the whole galaxy like fucking Lydia Tarr. So it's fair to assume that Paul is just really high.
I'm so high right now. I have no idea what's going on.
And you might be thinking, Alex, how would you know? Do you regularly take drugs and have epiphanies that you've discovered the answer to all life's questions? And to that I say,
do you not?
I'm just saying. Though Paul is very certain of what will happen if he doesn't make the choices that he ends up making, we don't definitively know any of that will occur. As I mentioned briefly before, one idea that both franchises explore is the idea of a messianic savior. Writer K. Salem Alimenta, I'm pretty sure I pronounced that wrong, and corresponding author Zai-ul-Haq, I'm pretty sure I pronounced that wrong too, argued in their article The Concept of Messiah in Abrahamic Religions that every time and place throughout history where and when mankind has been subjected to political, social, and religious persecution, the hope for a Messiah or Redeemer to rescue people from their position has become bigger and more pervasive. Though both films are dealing with messianic figures, Dune is the only one that makes a commentary on the purpose of religion, the motivations behind why most religions are created, and how a community is affected by said figure. Star Wars is less interested in exploring that, at least in this movie. Empire is more focused on the whole duality of man thing.
The what? The duality of man, the Jungian thing, sir.
Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung wrote in his book Modern Man in Search of a Soul, every good quality has its bad side, and nothing that is good can come into the world without directly producing a corresponding evil. This is a painful fact. We all know that Luke is a good person. He's a nice boy. But as Jung said, we all have a dark side. And this film is all about Luke coming face to face, literally, with the so-called corresponding evil that is created from the better angels of his nature.
What's in there?
Only what you take with you.
Luke learns of his true parentage and he is horrified. The mere idea that he could be associated with this evil force, let alone the implication that he's destined to follow in Vader's footsteps, puts him in a state of emotional crisis. But he doesn't embrace his quote-unquote destiny. He chooses to believe that he can make his own destiny, a belief that he lacked earlier in the movie.
I don't believe it.
Is why you fail.
Paul does not do that. He also has a revelation about his heritage, finding out that his mother is the child of the evil Baron Harkonnen. And after learning this, he almost immediately decides to embrace the brutality of his newfound heritage. Though, to be fair, he was pretty high at the time. Now, I admittedly was not feeling this when it happened. I think I still had some PTSD from Rise of Skywalker. I was just out on pale, creepy, secret grandfathers. But this revelation motivates him to behave more like his adversaries. He says, "We're Harkonnen, so let's be Harkonnen," implying that he needs to adopt the traits of his greatest enemy. And by the end, we can see that we are looking at a very different Paul, and what he's about to do is gonna be costly.
An animal caught in a trap will gnaw off its own leg to escape. What will you do?
Several months later.
You die like an animal.
Which is like the exact opposite of what Luke did. This is like if at the end of Empire, Luke joined Vader so they could destroy the Emperor like Vader had implied.
You can destroy the Emperor. Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy as father and son.
You'd be like, well, they are father and son, and they're stopping the Emperor, who's evil, so that's cool. But why does this feel not so good? Empire ends on a more positive note. I mean, everything still sucks, but aside from some emotional trauma, everything is, like, the good guys are mostly okay. Yes, the rebellion is in shambles, and the Empire is on the rise, and Luke is not in a good place after finding out that his dad is basically space Stalin. We don't know how it's all gonna play out in the end, but at least we know one thing. Luke's fate is not written in stone. No matter what his visions or Yoda or Obi-Wan or even Vader tell him, Luke is the master of his own destiny. There's a sense of hope that things will turn out alright because Luke already made the big difficult choice. Paul, on the other hand, nah. Again, like Anakin, Paul has a prophecy about him being a messianic figure.
A war in my name! Everyone shouting my name!
Paul,
Only difference is that the Bene Gesserit have been planting stories of prophecy throughout the known universe for centuries. So it's not something magical, mystical, or even spiritual in the end, because it was all made up by this group of people.
It's not a prophecy. It's a story.
And with all of this spiritual and physical support from the Fremen, he wages a holy war on the galaxy. But again, it's not really a holy war. It is to everyone else involved. But to Paul, it's really about avenging his father's death and filling the hole that his passing left behind.
Your father didn't believe in revenge.
There are a lot of parallels between Star Wars and Dune, but we all know why we're here. Which one is better? Well, I'm not gonna lie, guys, both of these films are incredible. I thought it'd be easier for me to come to a conclusion here, but I honestly think both of these sequels are spectacular. What's more, they're trying to do two different things. Yes, I just pointed out a lot of ways that they're similar, but at their core, they're telling drastically different stories about characters making drastically different decisions. A better comp would have been Dune Part 2 versus Revenge of the Sith. But you know what? You're the ones who kept comparing this to the best sequel ever made. You did this. I didn't do this. You did. Seriously though, comparing these two movies is like comparing apples and a fruit you never heard of before. Took a bite and was like, this is pretty good. It kind of tastes like an apple. But why does it look so fucking weird? So I guess for me, the best way to decide is to break down the nitpicks. That's right, we're getting deep and focusing on the shit that nobody really cares about. Every movie has dumb shit in it that doesn't necessarily ruin the movie for you. But since both of these movies are so great, I'm gonna have to focus on the little things that are probably gonna have a lot of you guys calling me an asshole. One thing that kind of bugs me is that when we get our fight scene at the end between Paul and Fade, so Paul gets stabbed in the gut, and before getting stabbed again, he takes the blade out of his belly and kills Fade with it. This is a great scene, and I ultimately like how Paul had to get stabbed for him to eventually gain the upper hand against Fade. But the way it all happens is kinda stupid. Paul gets stabbed in the stomach, and he survives, and then he stabs Fade in the exact same spot, like the exact same spot, and Fade instantly dies. I get that Paul shouldn't immediately die from his wounds. I'm willing to suspend that disbelief. But when the other guy gets stabbed in the exact same spot, it's kind of unbelievable that he would immediately pass away. Christopher Walken, why is he in this film? It's not that he's bad, it's just that anyone could have played this role. Florence Pugh, Léa Seydoux, and Charlotte Rampling aren't in the film that long either, but they're actually acting. Walken doesn't really do anything but sit around and look sad. And that interrogation scene could have gone way further. Like, I'm surprised that it was just edited so weird. I feel like they were trying to cut around a bad performance. I hate to say that, but did nobody else find that scene weird? Now to talk about Empire. How does Han's restraints come off after the carbonite sequence? Like, he has the handcuffs on, then afterwards his hands are clearly not bonded anymore. I mean, what is that bullshit? You know what? I'm sorry. I can't pretend to be mad at this movie. That is a genuine nitpick, but I don't even, it doesn't even bother me. I tried, guys. I really tried to watch this movie with a critical eye. I mean, I obviously was watching this movie very intently. Like, maybe too much. I dived really deep. And I loved Dune and Dune 2. And who knows, that film series could end up being the better trilogy, because Return of the Jedi is honestly not that great. But in the written words of Andrew Lincoln, Empire, to me, you are perfect. And I truly mean that. You can tell because now I'm playing the chill, sincere music to suggest that I'm not imploring any hyperbole. Empire is the perfect movie for me. Everyone perceives art in a different way, and what I get from this movie is going to be very different from what you get from this movie. And that is the miracle of films like these. That even though we are all special little snowflakes with our own thoughts and feelings and reactions, the fact that these stories can mean so much to so many people is absolutely beautiful and is ultimately what makes fandom so wonderful, especially nerd culture fandom. All of us damaged ducks manage to put our differences aside as we collectively appreciate stories that hold a mirror up to society under the guise of a fantastical war in our stars. So if you're a big old nerdy nerd who happens to be watching this video in the 5th month of the year, I just want to say two things. May the 4th be with you, and may thy 9th chip and chatter.
Go outside, nerd.
Get out.
Gretchen,
go.
Stop trying to make
I ain't got
fetch
time to be
happen.
distracted by
It's
your
not
worthless
going to
chime-ins.
happen.
Okay, that's it for this video. Don't forget to check out the Drunk Banthas podcast every Monday night at 8 p.m. Pacific time. Or you could watch it some other, you don't have to watch it live. But if you do want to join the conversation in the live chat, we will surely shout you out on the show. And last but not least, don't forget to check out our show, Does It Hold Up?, where we talk about classic genre films to see if they're as good or as bad as we remember, every other Monday at 4:20 a.m. Also consider perusing through our merch store, where we have hats, hoodies, shirts, mugs, and a bunch of other stuff with our stupid name on it. Seriously though, it really helps the channel, and there's actually some dope stuff in there. I got a couple of shirts from there. It's pretty cool. But until next time, stay safe, my little white messiahs, and may the force be with you.